Okay, so when we are accessing Google Slides, to open Google Slides, it's a very straightforward process. We simply click on the waffle, as they call it. It'll show you a bunch of different apps. Remember, in order to use the Google apps, you must have a Google account. So you simply click on the slides icon, and it will take you to the place where you can create a new slide. Now, before we go into this is the one way in which you can create Google Slides. However, I've always felt the other way of going about it is a better pathway to take. So whenever you are creating a Google slide, it will automatically be stored in Google Drive. So in order to keep your content organized, I've always felt it's a better option, rather than going through Google Slides, go through Google Drive when you're creating your content. So it's the same process. We open up Google Chrome, we go to the waffle, and we click on Google Drive. In our last session, we spoke about Google Drive. So if you missed out on that video is available on our YouTube channel. So when I've opened up Google Drive, I first navigate to the folder that I want to save this content in. If you don't do that, just to show you what happens, all content that you create will just simply be created in your home folder. And this can become quite a mess quite quickly. My own home folder is not looking as good as it should look because I've been playing around with new tools. I'll have to clean it up at some point. But the best bet is to go into a folder to find the space where you want to create your file. Right, so we're going to create a new file over here. And to create one, you can either click on the new icon, and it'll give you the options: Google Docs, Google Sheets, Google Slides. We are not going to be working with Google Sheets today. We'll focus on Google Docs and Google Slides. But this is a very, very basic introduction into how these tools work. Right, so Google Slides, we'll click on Google Slides, and it'll take us to a new blank presentation. Now from there on, you'll see Google Slides looks very similar to PowerPoint, because it essentially is a stripped down version of PowerPoint. It doesn't have all the functionality of PowerPoint. If you look here at themes, it also has a much more limited set of themes that you can use. However, in terms of getting content across, it does exactly the same thing. One of the key things that I think we need to keep in mind when it comes to using Google Slides and using any of these tools effectively is we need to start considering, how do we make sure that what we are creating is a useful tool without the presentation of the teacher necessarily. So it needs to be a self-navigated type of content that we want to create. So in its simplest form, you'll see there's a number of different slides. This is our title slide, so we'll just call this new slide. And over here, when we want to create, and we'll call this is a demonstration. And all the basic tools that you want to use will be there. So you can change the font, you can change the size, you can make it bold, italics, underlined. We can change the color, etc., etc. And you can play around with this as much as you want. For the purpose of this presentation, I'm just going to draw on one or two slides that I have already created. So just want to quickly go in here. Right, so here we have a very simple example of, I'm just going to remove that. Let's say we wanted to create something called Romeo and Juliet. Who killed the star-crossed? Right, who killed the star-crossed lovers? Right, now here I've already quickly added some content that I want to be able to use. Well, it's suicide door. We all know what happened in the story. Romeo got the poison himself, drank the poison himself, and therefore killed himself. Juliet woke up, saw Romeo was dead, and took his dagger, then stabbed herself. So she also killed herself. But wait, is it really that simple? Now naturally, if we have something that looks like this, it is not particularly interesting to look at. That's why we start adding certain things, that we can start adding certain elements. Now, one of the things that I've always liked about Google Slides is the fact that the animations pane is such a simple thing to use. So once we've created our slide, our first slide, we simply click on transition, and transition will bring us to the point where we select, so how do these slides change from one to the next. So here, at the moment, I've got none selected. You'll also notice Google Slides has fewer presentation tools. We're just going to use a simple flip one, and we will apply it to all the slides. And what is quite nice now, let's just quickly correct that. What is quite nice, if I click on an object, I can simply click on Add Animation, and the animation will automatically be added, and then by paragraph, and it displays. So it's as simple as that, and now everything that I've typed will appear paragraph by paragraph and not all at once, which is a very important thing to keep in mind when we are presenting. When we want to present our slides to our learners and they are going to have to go through it on their own, it is a very important thing to not just overload them with a lot of information in one go. So rather do it little bits and pieces. Now, if we want to make this a little bit more interesting, we're going to select a theme. So let's say we want to use a theme like this orange one. So there we've got some elements that already makes it look a little bit better. And in this way, you can play around with different themes. Whatever you feel works best for what it is that you want to present. So we're going to stick with this orange one. Now, one of the other things that's also very useful about Google Slides is the ability to insert images. When you insert an image, one of the features that works very well is you can immediately go to search the web. So here we're going to search for Romeo and Juliet. And it gives us a couple of pictures on Romeo and Juliet. And I can very quickly say, right, I like this one. I'm going to select it, insert, and there I've got a picture of Romeo and Juliet. Very quickly, my presentation is starting to look a little bit more interesting. So if we want to add another slide to this, we'll just add this slide quickly. Want to change some of these things. Again, it's some text that I prepared beforehand. The families did it. Again, we go into our animation. If we click on the animation and you simply click Add Animation, it gives you the option of how it enters by paragraph. There we have it. We want to insert another image of Romeo and Juliet. Let's say now we want to search for the Capulets. We'll take this image. Right, and it is as simple as that, and we've created a very quick presentation on what we want to add. Now, remember when we said we want to look at self-directed elements of this. So if we wanted to, we could also go and create an index here where we, let's say we want to create an option that looks like this, and we call it index. And here we say slide 1, slide 2. Right, obviously you can make it more complicated, the name that you give it. And now what's quite nice is the minute that you've done that, any index that you've created, if you select something, you can click here, insert link. Insert link will either give you the option of giving a hyperlink, so it's any other URL that you want to use to other content that you've created, but it also gives us the option that you can select a slide in this presentation. So in other words, it gives you a couple of options: next slide, previous slide, first slide, last slide, and then also slide 1, slide 2, slide 3, slide 4. Right? So we want to select slide 2 in this instance, apply, and in this instance we want to select slide 4, apply. Right, now please note, if you look here on the left hand side, you'll see that I've actually created my whole index incorrectly, because my index is now actually slide 3, whereas in slide 2, I'll get to this one. Now, all that we do is we click and we just drag that one over here, and don't worry, our linking will still be correct. So slide 1, the link will still go to the correct slide, and slide 2 will still go to the correct slide. So in each of these, what I could now do is I could, let's say we want to insert an image. We're going to search the web, and we're going to look for a back button. Okay, now we don't want that. Back button. Right, so there we've got a nice little back button we want to use. We're going to insert this back button. It is much too big. We'll make it smaller. And this back button, we can again, if we right click on it, you can also turn this one into a hyperlink. Sorry. Right, please note, finding this one's hyperlink is a little bit more complicated sometimes, because it doesn't by default want to give us the option. If we right click on it, you won't see the hyperlink. So if you click on it and you look in your top ribbon, you will still find the hyperlink button there, insert link. So now we're going to say insert link. This one we want us to take to our slide 2, the index. And we're going to just simply right click and copy this one and paste it over here. It'll do the same thing for me. So now we have our basic presentation. Let's have a look at what it looks like. So we have here Romeo and Juliet, who killed the star-crossed lovers. We go to our index. We want to skip straight to slide 2. The families did it. We click and we click and we click and we read all about that. And we can just click on the back button. It'll take us back to the index. Slide 1, well, it's suicide, click and click and click. And there it is. And we can click on the back button again. So they can either click and they can move through the presentation in that way, or you can create little buttons that they can follow in a certain way. In this way, given time, you can create quite a complicated tree of learning, where you move around within the slide to the different points in the slide. Obviously, the more you play around with it, the more comfortable and more familiar you will become with it, and the more you'll be able to have it work exactly the way that you want it to work. One of the great things about Google Slides, and this is why it's an important tool to consider, it works and it is optimized to work well on handheld devices. So we need to be aware of the fact that many of our learners are not necessarily accessing content using a laptop or using a desktop. So they have a much smaller viewing space that they need to access content. For that reason, you need to be very careful and very aware of how you want learners to access content. Obviously, we can also assume that when things go back to normal, then they will be able to access computer labs, or hopefully they will be able to access computer labs or be able to have some other form of internet access where they will have a bigger screen to view it. But for the interim, we have to be aware of how it is being used. Another thing that you also need to be very aware of is how we go about not over cluttering the files that we are sending to our learners, that we are actually sending smaller bits of content. One of the other very nice things that we have when we want to share this file with our learners, we can go back and we can make changes to the file, and the changes will appear on their files as well. Very simply, if you want to go and share this file now with your learners, we have completed it. And there's a button in the top that says share. If we click on share, it gives us the option now of get shareable link. This is in all likelihood the way that we're going to use it. Alternatively, we spoke about Google Classroom last week as well. You can use Google Classroom as well. Then there's a different process. But if we want to share the link, you click here on get shareable link. Please make sure that when you're setting if you're not using a Gmail account, if you're using a Google specific account, make sure that that it is on anyone with a link and not only people within your organization. This is an especially frustrating thing sometimes, even if schools have learners that are accessing their content with their domain login details. sometimes they get confused how to do this exactly. So anyone with a link is often a very good way of doing this. Another big benefit of that is if you activate it in this way, you can share it with your colleagues who can then also share it with their learners. Please note this is obviously set to can view. So anyone who has this link can't make changes. They can do nothing to it. But again, because it is accessible online, because it is because we are using a system, a cloud-based system, changes that I make at a later stage will automatically appear on someone else's screen. Right, so that is a very, very straightforward and very basic introduction into Google Slides. I think it's an important thing to keep in mind, this how to create this index, the self-navigated learning space. So in that sense, you can create lots of interesting ways of linking content. The other thing that you also please keep in mind when sending out when sending out content like this, it is a very useful tool in the way that we are linking now to make sure that you're not actually breaking out of the file, but you remain within the one file. So it's easier for learners to navigate moving around whatever it is that they do. PowerPoint presentation setup. This is something important that I forgot to mention. Let's say for argument's sake, I'm going to just give a quick presentation of my, just want to give a presentation of my entire screen. If you already have a PowerPoint setup, as many of us naturally will have, then it becomes a lot easier. If I simply click here, I've got a PowerPoint presentation. I'm just going to simply click and drag, click and drag it into this folder and drop it into the folder. Now the PowerPoint presentation will upload. And it is very quick to just take that PowerPoint presentation. Remember, once you have the PowerPoint presentation on Drive, you can share that file directly as is, or you can convert it into Google Slides. What Google Slides has done now is they basically have automatic converters loaded into it. So you can see there it is, Life of Pi, important themes in quotes. If I click on it, it automatically just opens up in Slides. And